Okay, so as I was saying, I'm a professor in the writing department, and I've been teaching writing for a good 20 years now, surprisingly. And basically, what I'm teaching to you today are all of the things about thesis statements that I have learned through those years of working with students and really racking our brains, figuring out what the heck is a thesis statement and why does it seem so mysterious? It truly does not need to be mysterious. And so hopefully today we will demystify it and give you some strategies to formulate thesis statements without, pulling your hair out if you have hair to pull out. What we'll be doing is watching a series of videos and then working together to actually workshop some thesis statements together. So what I'm going to do is share in the chat and James, I emailed you the link, but you can share it
I'll
when
be able to share
new
it
people
again too.
add. Yeah.
Yep.
So let me make sure I'm sharing with everyone and not just one person. So if you can follow this link, it will send you to a Google Slides document. So it's just like PowerPoint, except it's in the cloud. I see lots of people joining. I don't really want you to do anything. Everyone can edit this document, so please do not change anything on the first 3 slides. If you do, just press Control Z to undo what you've done so that we can make sure the first 3 slides stay stable for us. Great. We have 34 in the document. How many do we have here? 70. Wow, 72 participants, James.
Yes.
Phenomenal. Okay, so what we'll be doing, I want everyone to scroll through the blank slides. So slides 4 through 90, pick one and put your name on it. Thank you, or claimed, that's fine. If you see one that someone has already claimed, then move on to a blank one and just put claimed. The faster we can figure it out, and everyone finds their home in this slideshow, the better. So just find a blank slide, write claimed on it. Excellent. I see lots of people doing this. This is a space where your page here is the space where you will be editing the thesis statements that you're going to workshop today. Okay. So if you can go into one of these files and place your name or claimed on one of the pages. There's lots of people in the copy of the activity book document. Try to refresh the original one to make sure that it's now active and can work. Mine is forcing me to be in presentation mode, which isn't great. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use these slides to workshop the thesis statements that we're going to be working on today. If you have a thesis statement or an assignment question that you are trying to tackle right now from one of your courses, please feel free to copy and paste that into the slide that you have chosen. Once again, please don't change any of those the content on those first 3 slides. That's content for me. If you don't have a thesis statement that you're currently working on, please feel free to choose one of the thesis statements on slide 3 to workshop during this session. So you can try to apply what we're doing. So if you click on the link that's provided in the chat, so it's a Google Doc slideshow. It says http://docs.google.com/presentation.
I'll send it again. Oh, you
Yeah.
got it?
I just sent it a minute ago. Yeah. The third slide there has a bunch of different thesis statements that need to be workshopped that I have just brainstormed and made up for you to work on today. So find one that's, that approximates the type of discipline that you're in and press copy and then paste it into the slide that you want to work on. Make sure you don't cut and paste, because then you're removing the option for others to work on that thesis statement. If anyone's having trouble, feel free to turn your mic on and ask for support, or let me know in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, today is my first time and I'm finding it, I don't know where to go and get the...
No problem. So do you have the Google slideshow open? Were you able to click the link?
I click, it didn't load. This click, don't go. Okay, let me click again.
It took you a while to get on as well, but it finally loaded. Yeah, sorry. You know, it's we've got a wonderful number of participants today. Here's a copy of the document. So I have all of them open, so you can feel free to click this link. Some students will be working in it as well. Because it's a copy, some of the students who had already put their names on the first.
Okay, I have the topic. So where do I put it? Oh.
Great. So find a slide that other people haven't claimed, or it doesn't look like anyone's on them, and put your name, put your topic, and that's going to be the slide that you're working in.
Okay. Well, that one, somebody has it already.
Yeah, just find a blank one. There's lots. It goes up to 90. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah. All right. So we've got 25 people in one, 5 people in the third one, and 41 people in the first one.
We can work in a group, right? Is it?
No, we're just going to work individually, but we're going to.
Okay, I got to empty one now.
Yeah, great.
one.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi. So we have to pick one of these thesis statements. Like, can we, if we have our own, can we put it into the Google slide, or?
Yeah, I would prefer, if you have your own that you're working on, that you put that into the Google site. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you're not working on one, or if you really just want to choose one of these template thesis statements that we're going to workshop, then choose one of those.
Okay.
Yeah. They're just there. Okay. So this is just a way that we're going to be able to apply some of what we learn about thesis statements, and we'll discuss it and we'll workshop with each other as we go. Okay. So what we're going to do, our work in the next hour is going to be divided into sort of 3 parts. The first part, we're going to focus on what thesis statements are. What the heck are they? And we're going to practice making our thesis statement that we're workshopping into a thesis statement that we can be sure that it can be categorized as a thesis statement and not some other kind of statement, etc. So we're going to watch a few videos and workshop our thesis statements. In the second part of our 3 parts, we're going to work on strategies for revising our thesis statements to make them stronger. And then in the third part, we're going to review some myths and facts, and I will do a general Q&A where I can provide more support for anyone who has additional questions, even if it pertains to your specific thesis statement that you're workshopping. Okay.
I can't see you though.
Charity, have you found the Google slide?
Yes, I did. Open? Thank you. Yeah, it's open.
Great.
I already typed the document, my topic.
Great. Awesome. Sounds good.
But I can't see you. I wish I could be able to be seeing you.
I must be in a different window.
Okay, then that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to watch a video that I made with a colleague of mine out of St. Mary's University on just what thesis statements are. And it's only a few minutes, and then we're going to stop and we're going to do a thesis check that I discuss in the video on the thesis statement that we have on our slides. Okay. All right, everyone can see my shared screen?
Yep.
I can't.
Charity, there's 2 options. One, you could minimize the size of your screen You can do
Okay.
that by making it a smaller window, or you can close it right now and go back to your Zoom.
Okay.
At the
I
bottom of
mean in my
computer.
thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
I'm going to hit play. So we're going to listen to what are thesis statements.
Hello, I'm Brian.
And I'm Stephanie.
Welcome to the first video in our series, Demystifying Thesis Statements. In this video, we explain what thesis statements are in plain terms.
Because thesis statements capture your central conclusion, we could think of them as spoilers.
It's a spoiler in that we give the reader what they want up front, a kind of promise or obligation from the writer. This is what I'm going to show or demonstrate.
Yeah, that works well too. But I think, technically, they're answers. The answer, in fact, to whatever question we're pursuing in the paper.
Right. It's the answer up front, at the beginning, so the reader knows what they're going to get from the paper. It's like, here's the conclusion, and here's how the paper is going to work towards that conclusion.
Thesis statements don't just say the answer, they also give a sense of the stakes of the argument. This is what is commonly referred to as the so what question.
So, thesis statements are two things: the answer to the research question and the reason the question matters. Here's an example that shows both of those elements at work. The Stanford prison experiment involved many ethical violations that underscore the importance of ethical protocols like informed consent.
The two parts of this thesis statement are identified here. The answer to the question at hand is in white. The Stanford prison experiment involved many ethical violations. And the explanation of why that matters is underlined. That underscore the importance of ethical protocols like informed consent. We could just say that this is a thesis statement because it's an arguable claim. We could argue the opposite. The Stanford prison experiment didn't involve ethical violations. But we can also use a thesis check strategy to see if it is answering a question.
All you have to do is transform your thesis statement into the question it's answering. In this case, our thesis begs two questions. Was the Stanford experiment ethical? And what did the experiment teach psychologists about research ethics?
This thesis statement answers these questions. It tells us that the Stanford experiment was not ethical and that it taught psychologists a lot about informed consent protocols in particular. Here's what a statement that fails the thesis check might look like. In this paper, I investigate whether the Stanford prison experiment was ethical.
This statement reminds me a lot about what the writer intends to investigate, but not what they'd find. It's missing the answer. It may as well be stated as a question. Was the Stanford prison experiment ethical? Because it doesn't offer any information beyond the question.
I'd say to this, so what? Great question, but nothing else. It fails the thesis check. You can't generate the question at hand here because this is the question at hand. This is what's called a statement of purpose, which we'll review in video 2.
Check out the other video.
Okay, so what we're going to do now on your slide is this thesis check strategy. So what I want you to do is try to generate from your thesis the question or questions that your thesis is begging, the questions that your thesis is responding to. And I want to know, do you have an answer on your hands? Or do you have something more like a statement of purpose where you're just saying what you intend to look at in your paper? So take a couple of minutes and workshop your thesis statement to do the thesis check. So find your slide in one of the three documents that one of the three slideshows that we have open here. Find the slide that you're working on, go to your thesis statement, and do the thesis check on it. So generate beside it the questions that it is begging. What questions is it answering? If anyone is willing to share, please tell us what slide you're on in which document. So 1, 2, or 3. I'm labeling the documents 1, 2, and 3. Great, thanks, Jody. So in document 1, slide 15, Jody's working. Okay, so Jody, your humanities thesis statement is, this essay examines the experience of mothering, focusing on the relationship between mothers and daughters in the African Caribbean diaspora during the 20th century, through the intersectional lens of gender, race, and culture. Further, this essay recognizes that the process of mothering is deeply connected with socioeconomic and socio-historical factors, including the legacies of slavery, colonialism, patriarchy, racism, and trauma. So the questions, so we want to apply the thesis check strategy here, which means we want to figure out, is this a thesis? And the way that we know that is that it begs a few questions, that it answers questions. So what questions do you think you're answering, Jody?
I'm not too sure. I'm still trying to kind of brainstorm that. I guess questions related to motherhood, like what the lens is, which time period we're looking at, motherhood in which context.
Right. So, I mean, those like seem to be, to me, general topics that you're getting at. If I look specifically at this thesis statement, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to modify your slide just a
Yes,
bit
please
here.
go ahead.
So I'm going to hit enter between the first part, the sentence that says this essay examines, and the further this essay recognizes, and ask you if one of these things seems more like a thesis than the other. Up here you have, this essay examines the experience of mothering, but you don't tell me what the result of that examination is, right?
Okay.
So this here is a statement of purpose. It's what you're up to. And it's absolutely fine to include that in your paper, especially if this is a complicated paper, which this is because you're doing so many different things. So the second sentence seems to me to get more at an answer, because it seems to suggest, and maybe because I don't know more of the context of your paper, this isn't your answer, but this further, the essay recognizes that the process of mothering is deeply connected with socioeconomic and sociohistorical factors. I don't know if that is potentially one of the things that you find as a result of this examination.
Yes, it is.
So this would constitute a kind of answer. Right? So if you can supplement recognize for find, demonstrate, conclude, you don't have to use those terms, but if you could, then you have an answer on your hands. And essentially that is what a thesis statement is. Oh, sorry. Yes, I can share my screen. Does that make sense, Jody?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, so the thesis check here would be, okay, well, what question does this second sentence beg? And I would say it's something like, but if we can just take this answer you have, further, this essay recognizes that the process of mothering is deeply connected, and just transform it into a question, right? So
Okay.
you can say, what factors are or influence the process of mothering in African Caribbean diaspora during the 20th century. So your sentence, further, this essay recognizes, answers that question.
So would it be considered a thesis statement?
Yes.
Okay.
It has a central answer to this question, right? Because
Okay.
ultimately, all a thesis statement is an answer to a research question. And I think, Jody, what this example, thanks for allowing us to go through it here with everyone watching us, is, no, thank you. I think that what this shows, Jody, is that actually we don't often start writing with a very clear understanding of the research question that we're after. It's just like not how we've typically been taught to write, especially in the humanities. And that actually is very important. Figuring out what question we're asking, that can guide our construction of a thesis statement. So really, when we want to commit to becoming better thesis statement writers, crafters, what we need to start with is becoming good question askers, like formulating a research question from the get-go, because all your thesis statement is an answer to the question. Now, can anyone remind me, in the video, we said that thesis statements are two things, an answer and then something else. Can someone let us know?
Answer, purpose.
Yes, the purpose. So why does this answer matter? And so Jody, I think your next sentence here could address that, because it doesn't, right here, you tell us that these factors apply, but you don't tell us why it matters. So you're missing the so what question. That's maybe what you need to add next. So why does this matter? And we're going to get to formulating that in a little bit here. First, I want to stop and watch another video where we clarify the difference between the statement of purpose, a paper roadmap, and a thesis statement. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that I'm not really missing any questions. Okay. There's going to be lots of opportunities for me to pick on you and allow me into your revision process. So thank you so much for offering Fatima, Kara, and Tisha, and Kate. Okay, so I'm just going to, so we're going to watch a short video where we look at the difference between the statement of purpose, a paper roadmap, and the thesis statement. And then we're going to go back to our, what we're workshopping, and we're actually going to craft each of those statements and see how they're different. Okay, I just need to share. Okay, great. Oh, I was doing that. All right.
Hello, I'm Brian.
And I'm Stephanie.
Welcome to the second video in our series, Demystifying Thesis Statements.
In this video, we explain what thesis statements are not, including statements of purpose and paper roadmaps. As we discussed in video 1, thesis statements are really just answers to the question at hand, whatever question is driving your research, and a brief explanation of why that answer matters.
It's common for students to think that they have a thesis statement when they actually have a statement of purpose, what they intend to research in a paper.
Right. Statements of purpose don't offer an answer, but rather an intention to discover one.
You can tell the difference between thesis statements and purpose statements by looking at the action words they're using. In thesis statements, where you're presenting an answer, you're likely to be using words like find, demonstrate, or show.
And in statements of purpose, you're going to be using words like set out to, ask, or attempt.
Yeah, right. Students can also confuse thesis statements with descriptions of the outline of their paper, like what they do first, second, or third on their way to the conclusion.
But they're not thesis statements because they don't provide answers to the questions at hand. You won't find in a paper roadmap a penultimate statement like, I find X.
In the next video,
okay, so what we're going to do now is activity 3. So I want us to, on your slide, and because we're not presenting these slides, you can go ahead and make the font like size 12 so that you can fit all this stuff on your slide. But you can, activity 3. So I want you to try to make sure that to craft a statement of purpose, a paper roadmap. If you don't know exactly what the outline of your paper might be, just sort of make up, like envision what your paper would include and craft a paper roadmap that includes that, and show how these are different from your thesis statement, which is the statement of the answer. And remember that each of these statements are sort of distinguished by the verb that you use. So your thesis statement that's presenting the answer will have something like find, demonstrate, show, I reveal, I illuminate, right? And the statement of purpose will be something like I set out to, I will examine, as we saw in Jody's example, like something that is implying that you intend to do something. The paper roadmap is often marked by something that looks like, you know, first I will show X or discuss X, then I will do, you know, Y, and finally I will do Z. So I want you to craft those 3 types of statements or those 2 other types of statements alongside the thesis that you're workshopping, just so that we can have a clear sense of the difference between them. And once again, let me know if I can workshop with you, with everyone, in front of everyone. That would be very helpful, I think. Except I can't see the chat anymore. Here it is. Oh, great. Also, if you have questions, please ask them in the chat. I'm more than happy. So Jody's asking, should you have a statement of purpose, a thesis statement, and a paper roadmap, or is it one or the other in combination? So I would say that these are, other than the thesis statement itself, the statement of purpose and the paper roadmap are definitely optional. If you're writing a paper that is longer than 6 pages, it's very useful to have a paper roadmap that can help your reader navigate that extensive discussion that you have in that fairly complex paper, especially if you're writing, you know, a 10-page paper. A paper roadmap can be really helpful at the outset. It's a kindness to your readers. Statements of purpose can be extraordinarily helpful for telling your readers what you're up to and for having them anticipate that thesis statement that you're, you know, the answer that you're going to state up front as a kind of spoiler. This is what I find ultimately. But you definitely don't need to have either of those 2 elements, especially if you're writing a fairly short essay, you know, something like 4 or 5 pages. You can just have your thesis statement. You're welcome. Is anyone willing to share what they're working on, and I can jump in like I did with Jody and help out?
Yes. Can you come to slide 10?
Are you in number 1?
Yes, activity 1 book. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so this is you here.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you say your name for me just so I don't mess it up?
Vidushan.
Vidushan. Okay, so here you've got your statement of purpose is the objective of the proposed research is to parametrize textile geometries and seams, locations and geometries with respect to the drag force and Reynolds number. Okay. So I'm assuming that that says something meaningful in your field.
Yes.
Great. So that's definitely an objective. So I would say you've got a statement of purpose that is not a thesis statement.
Right.
Your thesis statement you have in the form of a hypothesis, which in the more sciencey disciplines, the STEM disciplines, is, you're absolutely right, how you would formulate a thesis statement up front in a lot of ways. You would have your hypothesis. This is what I'm making an informed guess. I will find it as an answer to my research question or to the objective, what I'm setting out to find. So you're hypothesizing that roughness will influence performance. Hey, I think I understand the sentence actually. Textile roughness will influence the performance of trips created by seams. And this is maybe the rationale for that hypothesis, Vidushan. The effect of surface texture and geometry of the trip is important in the design of novel skin suits. since it is believed that drag could increase if flow is not effectively tripped with cylindrical wires. Thank you for bringing this example to the group, because it's an important distinction between writing in the social sciences and writing in the sciences.
Right.
It's essentially the same in that you do put your answer up front,
Yeah.
except you afford for that process of learning as you write your paper or conduct your study. And so there is a possibility that your central conclusion will be slightly different in interesting ways, right, from your hypothesis. So yes, you definitely have a very clear difference between statement of purpose and your thesis statement here, your hypothesis statement. And that is that your hypothesis is definitely presenting an answer, and your statement of purpose, right, that your hypothesis is you're going to find this textile roughness influences these things for this reason. And your statement of purpose presents an objective of the proposed research. So your paper roadmap would, I'm not sure if paper roadmaps are common in your field.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that. Yeah.
So what I would recommend to you, since I'm not an expert in your field, is actually read some of the journals, you know, the published papers in your that are kind of right in this topic, and
Right.
see if it's common or not to say give a paper outline. And I'm sure for you, your paper outline would be something like lit review, methods,
Right.
findings,
Yeah.
which everyone in your field probably anticipates are coming anyways because it's so standardized. So
Mhm.
in that case, I wouldn't recommend that a paper roadmap is necessary.
Okay.
In the humanities and social sciences, when you're writing like, you know, an extensive research paper and the genre is fairly freewheeling, these paper roadmaps can be extraordinarily helpful for guiding, for giving the reader some indication of how you're going to go about tackling the problem, because we don't have, you know, the IMRAD form.
Right. But I
We have a
noticed that
couple
my
of
statement of
questions.
purpose is very similar to like what I wrote for my paper roadmap. Like the statement of purpose I wrote is like kind of like I'm gonna be parameterizing. I thought that was very like similar to what I would mention for my roadmap. So I don't know like how to like kind of differentiate.
Oh, I see. It's because I didn't understand what parameterize means.
Like
I
yeah, just
didn't get that.
like we look at like parameters, yeah, like just yeah.
Right. Well, certainly, I mean, I think this gets back to a question, I think Jody asked it earlier. Are these three things all necessary, and can they be done in combination?
Right.
They can absolutely be done in combination. And in essence, actually, sometimes your thesis statement will anticipate like an order of events in your paper as well. And it means that you don't need a roadmap. The point is that you just want to make sure that your thesis statement contains an answer, that it is not just a roadmap or just a statement of purpose. It needs to contain an answer, and you definitely have that. So I would say if you, these are really good questions to ask professors, tutorial leaders in your discipline. Because I don't have access to that discipline at all, I can't really say. But I can tell that you have an answer, that's your hypothesis, and you have an objective in your statement of purpose. And so those two, being able to distinguish between those two things is actually everything that you need to know about thesis statement writing,
Okay.
other than the why it matters, which we're going to get to next. Let me just attend to some of the questions here. Okay, Samantha. Hi, Stephanie. Having trouble using the Google Doc. Oh, okay. Oh, absolutely. No, Samantha, please stay and listen. And hopefully you can see my shared screen so that you can see the Google Doc and what other people are writing. And you can also, yes, oh, please stay. And, you know, James here, he's our Writing Center coordinator. So he can also, you can message him, James Robertson, in the chat, and maybe he can also provide some specialized support. I'm sure he'd be happy to do what he can. Right, James? Of course, he's going to say yes.
Yep.
Okay. I am going to go Keisha, document 1, slide 27. And then we're going to move on to the so what question. Keisha. Okay, so first of all, hi Keisha. So you
Hi.
have hi. And oh, we share Belle in common. That's
We
fun.
do.
Okay, so you've got a thesis statement here. Okay, so you're working on the template one that I provided?
Yeah.
Okay, so the template thesis statement is the internet brings people together in undemocratic ways. You've revised that to the last few years have proven that people's online interaction can lead to outcomes which have devastating impacts in a nation's democratic process. I'm sure you would do the research required to back up that very strong claim.
Sure, yeah.
So the thesis check, do you have an answer? I think, yeah, you're working with an answer for sure here because you're giving, the question is, what is the internet's impact on democratic processes? So that's your
Right.
thesis check, right? So you're
Okay.
good to go there. I think one thing that this brings up is the use of the word proven.
Okay.
In humanities and social science writing, proven is an extraordinarily strong claim to make. So I would always recommend that you hedge and say demonstrated.
Okay.
Okay, because all it takes is for one person to be like, what about this? And then done, you're done.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you know, like, and this is really a result of the last basically 50 years of theory in these fields, where what we have done as scholars is really embrace the fact that knowledge is always contingent on what we're able to know right now.
Right.
And so we can't make that claim proven because that seems so finite, like so finalized.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just sorry to point that out, but I think
No,
that's
this
useful.
is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then your statement of purpose is this paper will investigate the ways online interactions have negative impacts on the democratic process. Excellent. That is not a thesis statement because it doesn't tell us the ways.
Okay.
So
the difference, because they looked very similar to me. That's why I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, and this is why a huge problem with thesis statements is distinguishing between the statement of purpose and the answer. The thesis statement is your answer. And generally, it is marked by like these words, I find, I demonstrate, I show. And whereas the statement of purpose, just as you have here, is marked by I will investigate. It's an intention, not a finding. That's a very clear difference. And then your roadmap, yeah, first you're going to provide examples. So that's exactly, the roadmap is definitely like that. That was very helpful. Thank you, Keisha.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to just look at some of the questions here. Is it okay to use proven if you can back up your research claims? I mean, maybe. If you are working in a humanities context or a softer social science context, I'm going to say avoid it if you can. Generally, it's just as strong to say I demonstrate or these findings suggest even. And what you'll find when you read more scholarly work is that the most expert in a field will actually be the most hedged in the claims that they make. They're the ones who are saying, oh yeah, you know what? The research seems to be indicating that this is true. And it's because over generalizing or overstating something is one way to very easily have what you're saying be thrown in the garbage as like, oh, we can't trust that because it's just clear that that can't be the case. It can't be proven beyond any doubt. So I recommend that you hedge unless you're, unless other people have been in the field, have been saying that something has been proven and you can take it for granted. But I honestly don't think that you'll find people using that word proof. Okay, so, okay, you're very welcome. So what I'm going to suggest now, thank you so much for everyone recommending that we go and workshop your slides. And I will go back. I want to continue moving forward and developing our work. So what I'm seeing across a lot of our slides is that we all are figuring out the difference between a statement of purpose, which is an intention, and a thesis, which is an answer. But we're missing the so what question. Let me know in the chat if you've heard any of your previous teachers say that a thesis statement has to have a so what or address a so what question. It's a pretty common thing. Marjorie, can you say, I will attempt to prove? Boy, you guys are really committed to this word prove.
There may be some disciplines that
Yeah.
are represented in this particular workshop that are more on the hard science side, and within context, proof, is something that they're plenarily like invested in proof. But
yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's definitely, although once you get into the harder sciences or even the mathematics, proof means something different altogether. It's proof. A proof is more a rationalization for a theory. So I don't know. I think honestly, my blanket advice is if you're studying in any social science or humanities context, yeah, definitely hedge and say something like, I will attempt to show or demonstrate it in your statement of purpose. And also say, I show, I reveal, I find in your thesis statement where you're presenting the answer. And just avoid that word prove because it's going to get you into hot water. Your professor's going to circle it and say, really? Because it's such a strong and bold thing to try to do in an undergraduate context. So that's my advice. You can check in though, if you really want to use it, you can check in with your professors for sure. You're welcome. Thanks for your question. Okay, so I've seen some of you saying that, yes, you've heard about the so what question, and this is the second half of a thesis statement. So we're going to watch a video explaining what that is, and then we're going to try to craft an addition to our thesis statement where we add a so what, and then we can talk a lot about what whether we've got it or not. Let me find the video. It's the last one in this series.
Hello, I'm Brian.
And I'm Stephanie.
Welcome to the 8th video in our series, Demystifying Thesis Statement.
In this video, we review the infamous so what question that makes some thesis statements really stand out.
Yeah, answering this question has the power to move your essay up to the next grade point level. So far, we focused on strategies for constructing an answer to the question at hand. In this video, we'll focus on how to come up with why it matters.
It can be easy to forget this aspect of the thesis statement because it has to do with our reader's experience of our text. Have you ever found yourself unable to keep reading a scholarly article or a book because you just didn't see why it mattered? You want to avoid this when your professor reads your paper.
Absolutely. You need to explain why the answer to the question at hand is important to your reader directly.
Right. This often depends on the essay topic and the focus of the course. Sometimes reviewing the course syllabus or notes from lectures and readings can help you figure out what's significant about your essay topic.
Yeah, there's likely lots of directions you can take on this, but the best one is relevant to the context of your course.
And you can write these sentence starters down as a way of brainstorming a so what issue that's relevant to your course.
And these questions too. Download the worksheet for a handy list of all these prompts.
I like to refer to the so what question, or why it matters aspect of the thesis statement as the mic drop. So here we see the so what is missing. Even though Manet's painting depicts many of the advancements touted during the modernist period, it exposes the dark side of this progress for women.
One so what issue we could consider: what this shows about painters or artists during Manet's lifetime. To do this, we have to zoom out from the specific topic.
Well, actually, I think a lot of so what considerations require us to zoom out. This one asks us to zoom out and consider what's the big lesson here about painters or artists.
Right. If it doesn't work out, we can return here and try another prompt.
Okay, great. So if we move forward with what's the big lesson about painters or artists, we could end up with something like, Manet's freedom to critique modernist narratives of progress illustrates artists' important role as social commentators and underscores the importance of the arts in a healthy society.
Yeah, that's it. And this would make for a great thesis statement of why the thesis matters if the course touches upon the roles of artists in society. Here's another thesis statement missing the so what. Despite arguments that incarceration increases public safety by removing offenders from society, it has limited capacity to increase public safety in the long run through prisoner rehabilitation.
So I think two of these prompts are particularly relevant here. What does this knowledge allow for, and who needs to pay attention to it?
That makes sense to me. If we pursue those questions, we could craft a so what statement that reads like this. The public safety argument for incarceration does not hold up and instead points towards different models of restorative justice, which policymakers should seriously consider.
Yeah, so there's the who should pay attention, for sure, policymakers.
Yeah, and it shows that knowledge makes it possible to consider alternate models. So, these prompts are very helpful in leading you to articulate the why it matters aspect of the thesis statement.
And going beyond stating the answer to the question at hand to why that answer matters is essential. If you, Stephanie.
Welcome to the...
Oops, sorry. I'm just trying to keep this slide up. Here it is. Okay, so now what I would like us to do is work on adding a so what statement to our thesis. And I want to encourage you to add this as a second sentence that starts with this matters because, or this is important because. Is it okay to use?
Me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it possible you view my this and what I wrote?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I'm stuck somewhere.
Sure. Just let me know what's
In
where you
document
are.
31, please.
Okay.
And
Are you in number 2 or 3?
I don't know. I didn't see the numbers, but I know it's 31 document. I don't know which, because I just wrote some couple of questions that haven't yet done this.
All right, I'll try to find you here. Not in here. Okay. Is it this one, Charity? This essay is focused on how multinational companies, that one?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Found you. Okay. I just want to answer Asana, your question. Is it okay to use I statements sometimes? This is discipline specific. If you're working in the humanities and the softer social sciences like sociology, religion, history, then absolutely I statements are totally cool. If you are working in the harder sciences and the harder social sciences, like chemistry, biology, psychology, even some psychology, then the preference is no, that you wouldn't say I. And this is a really interesting disciplinary difference. Essentially, humanities and softer social science writers and scholars accept that our writing and our knowledge is subjective. It's always going to come from a person and be limited by like sort of our human framing and lenses, etc. And so they have become okay with using I see, I find, my research shows. Whereas in the harder sciences, they're still hung up on the idea that the scientific method brings objectivity. So there, you would be writing things like the research shows, this research shows, etc., because you're removing yourself from it a little bit. If that helps you to understand when to use I and when not to, there's some background. Okay, so everyone should be working on their so what question. And I want to bring to your attention, I'm just going to share it actually, the handout, which offers some of those questions, those prompts. Thesis statements handout. I'm going to grab the link. You can see everything I'm doing. So I'm putting it here in the chat. So you can open that and scroll down, I think to page 4 maybe, and you'll see those prompts to help you articulate the so what. And before I start working with Charity here, I want to remind you of a little point made in the video. I want to emphasize that your so what question will be most powerful if it kind of connects to the context of your course. So just saying, you know, this matters because, you know, policymakers need to consider this, but you're writing in the context of, you know, an English literature class where, you know, you're talking about literary criticism, that so what isn't going to do you much good because your audience isn't interested in it. So figure out, you know, go back to your course notes, to the course syllabus, think about the kinds of questions that the professor has been articulating and see how you can connect your answer and say, this answer is important to these questions because, and that will help you get to a so what question.
It's a very interesting question from Hassan in the chat right now.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, so to answer the
Thank
so
you.
what, Charity, we'll work on it in a second here. To answer so what, is it possible to sometimes zoom in instead of zoom out to uncover these aspects on the matter that have been covered in the thesis statement? For example, slide 23 here. This is a really good question. I hadn't thought about it that way, so I appreciate it. So the question is there a need? Books must be read in the context of the author's lives and intentions. That's the thesis. The question is there a need for consideration of author's intentions and lives when reading a book? Your statement of purposes, we try to evaluate these characteristics that need to be considered when reading a book in this work. Okay, and then your so what is, this matters because it may prevent old books to be criticized by modern values. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so your so what question would be, I'm just going to imagine this connected to your thesis. So I'm just going to copy and paste your thesis down here, Hassan. The books must be read in the context of lives and intentions. This matters because doing so reading in the context of the author's lives may prevent, criticizing old books according to modern values. Yeah, I think that's Hassan, I think that you're onto something. I'm not sure if that's zooming out or zooming in. I mean, I think that what you have here is definitely a so what. And if your class is about or touches on issues about interpretation and old versus new, then certainly this would be a so what statement.
By zooming in, I meant that, you know, the statement is kind of more general than you know, for what that is answered. So you know, trying to specialize, you're being more specific.
Right.
That was what I meant by zooming in.
Yeah, I think that you're onto something there for sure. I understand that. Thanks for clarifying. And I think the problem here is that the thesis statement that I came up with here is actually kind of super general. It doesn't give a reason why at all, right? And books must be read in the context of their authors, because, like, I think that the thesis statement doesn't actually, it gives a position, but it doesn't actually provide much of an answer. And so what you're observing when you're doing your so what here is that your so what's more specific than your thesis statement, because your thesis statement needs some revision, which is my fault because I came up with the thesis statement for you to workshop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I would prompt you also to do the same thing here, right? Obviously, you wouldn't use this wording from the get-go, but that it's unclear in your so what statement why criticizing old books according to the standards of modern values, why that is a bad thing. So I think the so what statement could go further as well and be more specific.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay. So let me look at Charity's example. I know we've got lots of questions happening. The so what is difficult when you write it in the social science, especially